Well, good afternoon. You're listening to the new WCEG Network on WCEGTalkRadio.com. Click your live stream tab, watch us live on Smart TV, YouTube, WCEG Network. I'm Celeste Giordano, your show host, with the Global Legacy and Wealth Building for the next hour. We're the worldwide community empowerment group where we speak life into the community. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and on Instagram at WCEG underscore talk underscore radio and at WCEG Network. And last but not least, our disclaimer, the topics and opinions are those of the show host and guest and not WCEG Network. And thank you for your continued support. And happy Tuesday, everybody. Excited to be here with our special guest. I want to say, Brooke and Faythe, this is probably maybe the third, fourth time in 5 years that we've had you on the show here with us. You're one of our favorite people, and especially during the month of February. And we have Brooke Ruffin, Vice President, Executive Director of Street Grace. And we also have, excuse me, Faythe, I didn't, your last name here. Hold on. It's a crazy day for me today. Faythe Kadona, and she is the subject matter expert with Street Grace. And we are looking forward to a great show here today. And Brooke, tell us a little bit about what February is for Street Grace.
So February is coming on the heels of a very busy month for us in the anti-trafficking world. It's coming off of January, which is Human Trafficking Awareness Month, and then come February, legislative session is in full swing. So we are present in 5 markets now. So our legislative session looks a bit different than it used to when we were just in Georgia. We still host the annual Advocacy Day down at the Capitol, which was earlier this month. We were thrilled to have our largest turnout since COVID. We had over 130 people show up to the Capitol, and then I think we had over about 630 views of it online as well. So I haven't checked recently, it's probably more. But we were advocating for legislative priorities in Georgia for anti-trafficking efforts. These priorities increase the punishments or ramifications for traffickers and buyers, and also aid survivors' ability to thrive after a life of exploitation. We're also getting into some legislation that involves AI image generation and things of that nature. So all contributing causes to human trafficking as well. So we're going to come into Child Abuse Awareness Month in March. So it's a busy season for the anti-trafficking world for sure.
Absolutely, and I apologize that I was not there on Tuesday when that you had the Capitol, and I think we had a radio show that day, and that's why I couldn't be
Mhm.
there. But the Women of Community Impact is a big fan of Street Grace, Bob Rogers, and Brooke. You and Faythe, you guys are just amazing people doing an amazing thing in the community of Atlanta. You're also in Texas, right? You're in a few other
Mhm.
places. I'll let you share that. But before we get started, I really would love to read the bios of Brooke and Faythe because they are doing phenomenal things. And I want to say, Brooke, last time we had you on the show, I don't think you were the vice president or executive director last year, were you? Was that something that came about in the past
No,
year?
I think I've had a different title every time I've been with you. So I started with Street Grace about 8 years ago as a volunteer. I think Faythe and I came on the same year as far as getting involved with Street Grace. We actually met at an advocacy day. Yes, we have grown. Part of my time is spent on national efforts through the Transaction Intercept Initiative and Youth Leadership Academy. And then I'm blessed to still be involved in our Georgia community on an integral outreach level.
Absolutely. Very, very good. Well, I would love for our audience and listeners, I'd love to read your bios because I want to make sure, and we also have it in the chats there, where they can get a hold of you at Street Grace. And these are two phenomenal ladies that you want to reach out to. You want to get to know them, how you can help them serve your community through Street Grace, or how you can have them maybe as guest speakers at one of your nonprofit events or your for-profit events, and how you can support them. So I'm going to start with Brooke right here, and Brooke Ruffin is Vice President, Executive Director. And Brooke Ruffin serves as Vice President, Executive Director of Georgia at Street Grace and has been a member of the team since 2018, assisting with the expansion from 1 to 5 markets. A survivor of childhood sexual abuse herself, she is dedicated to removing the stigma and educating children on how they can protect themselves from exploitation. In her role as Vice President, Executive Director, Ruffin is on the leadership team for Transaction Intercept initiative at Street Grace, a first of its kind investigatory platform that removes the costly, cumbersome, and time consuming process of human trafficking operations for law enforcement. Through managing the national expansion of the platform, Ruffin is responsible for demos, onboarding, and the management of a team of software engineers from around the globe through a partnership with Microsoft Hack for Good programs. Throughout her career, she has remained a strong advocate and volunteer for sexual abuse survivors, developed a dance class focused on reestablishing survivors' emotional connection to their physical bodies. Ruffin has been featured on numerous news outlets, youth conferences, and has advocated for legislation for Congress at a national anti-trafficking in-person roundtable in D.C. Wow, that's a lot, Brooke. Brooke graduated from magna cum laude from the University of Florida and has a background in advocacy and performance. She has previously served as operation manager and director of outreach, with the organization contributing to the development of training and content, awareness campaigns, and community engagement initiatives. You know, you've done an awful lot, Brooke, over the last 8 years. And I think I
We
met
have.
you
We've been
at eight
busy.
years. It was in 2016 when I think first time that the Women of Community Impact, met you and Bob Rogers, and we've had you speak at our in-person meetings. We've had
Mhm.
you on the radio show here at WCEG Talk Radio. And again, I want to give a shout out to Penny Rogers, our show producer, and Vivian, our show producers, for giving us this great opportunity to bring this kind of information to the community, through WCEG Talk Radio. A little bit about Street Grace that I wanted to put that you had on your bio here for our listeners is Street Grace is a faith-based organization that utilizes evidence-based demand reduction strategies to eradicate the commercial sexual exploitation of children through prevention, protection, policy, and pursuit. And CSEC is sexual activity with a child in exchange for something of value given to the child or a third person. And with that, I can't say enough, Brooke, just to welcome you here. And do you have an opening statement you'd like to give our audience and listeners?
No, other than thank you for having us today. I'm definitely going to send you a shorter bio next time. But
Well,
other
that's
than
okay.
that,
I mean,
um,
you've done,
I'm
you've done a
I'm
lot.
I'm so grateful to still have the opportunity to work with you, and thank you for your amazing advocacy work. Y'all have been faithful supporters and have never shied away from a very dark subject matter. We greatly appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And just, I just love that how when I first met you, you came on board, as you said, as a volunteer. And I think it was shortly, I don't know if it was a year or less than a year or two, you went out to California, I believe. And then you came back and you just keep going up the ladder right there and doing amazing things and doing things for people that really, don't know how to take care of themselves. So you're an advocate for them and the community. And I just appreciate everything that you do. The Women of Community Impact just loves Street Grace. And hopefully, maybe next time we can have Bob Rogers join us because we sure would like to see his face as well. Okay.
Awesome. It's good.
All right, Miss Faythe Kadona, I'm going to read yours as well. And you've got a great resume. And I love the first time, I think it was 2 years ago No, it'd be 3 years that I met you because you was the first time you were on by yourself, if I'm not mistaken. And then last year we had you and Brooke on together, and we're so glad to have you back with us today because you're doing amazing things with Street Grace. And I love the the retention that I see that you two ladies have with Street Grace right there, because we live in a world today that sometimes there's not a lot of retention in the workforce, but obviously you guys are so dedicated and it's a win-win situation. Really, it's a win-win-win. It's a win for Street Grace, it's a win for you, and it's a win for the community. So we're just grateful, for your tenure and everything that you give to Street Grace. So, Faythe is a subject matter expert in the fields of human trafficking, addiction, and domestic violence. She has a master's of administration of justice and security and keeps God at the center of her life. Faythe is currently working on her master's in marriage and family studies with the hopes to continue working with survivors and their families. Faythe is one of the founding members of the Street Grace Survivor Advisory Council and has served for the last 7 years on the council. Certified in trauma-informed care for youth and adults, Faythe is also a certified facilitator with Ending the Game and is the first woman in Georgia to be a licensed contract facilitator with Tyro Moms Leadership Program. Is it Tyro or is that right?
Tyro.
Yeah,
It's Tyro.
Tyro Moms Leadership Program, which helps women overcome the effects of incarceration, integrated back into their family units. Faythe has created curriculum and taught women in a residential treatment facility how to overcome trafficking and addiction. Before coming to Street Grace, Faythe was a case manager, intake coordinator, and residential support assistant for women at House of Cherith. Is that right?
Yes.
And Faythe has also helped create and establish a survivor mentor program with Street Grace and Hope Court of Chatham County, Georgia. That's around Savannah. Is that right? Chatham County?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. As a coordinator, she connected youth survivors in the program with adult survivor mentors while also mentoring several of the youth. Faythe has helped draft key legislation in Georgia, along with the Safe Survivor Advisory Council, to assist survivors in getting their records vacated or restricted, which passed under SB 435 in 2019. She was also instrumental in the name change bill, which passed under SB 34 in 2021, so that survivors can now get their names changed under seal instead of publicly. Faythe has also advised on the key legislative initiatives and bills in Georgia during the past several years. And Faythe, you're just doing some amazing things with the programs there at Street Grace. And I'd love for you to share a few opening comments, your passion, anything you want to share with our audience about you and what you're doing with Street Grace.
Okay, so thank you for reading my bio. I'm definitely going to send you a shorter one too. Because there's just, there's more, but I think my biggest passion is helping survivors get through not just the legislative process, but also having bills that actually help them overcome trafficking and addiction, because the problem is they're co-current and they run together. And we need stronger legislation in our state. And so that's just one of my passions. I love helping kids. I love helping people in general. It's always been something that I've done my entire life. And so I'm really looking forward to kind of see where we keep going in the future in the movement.
Absolutely. And and it takes a team and a village, to do the things that you do. And I know at the end of the show, we're going to educate and inform our community about where Street Grace was, many, many years ago and where they are today, because you guys have really brought Street Grace first and foremost to the front and center. And then again, you have a great leadership in Bob Rogers and many other people. But, you guys are some of the founding people right there that have, springboarded Street Grace to where it is today and what it's doing to eradicate the issues that are going on. So I'm going to start with Brooke. I don't know if you want to answer this question, and if not, you can pass it on to Faythe. But how is Street Grace unique in the anti-trafficking space?
I would say that Street Grace's work is unique in that we are one Christ-centered, and we believe Christ is seeking to redeem all things back to him and all times and circumstances, but also that we are demand-centric. A lot of the anti-trafficking organizations that you see here in the US are focused on international trafficking and not domestic, and are more focused on the much needed and essential rehabilitative services or restorative care. But if you look at the prevention side of a demand-centric organization, our future generations are our future victimized population and also our future demand population as well. So really looking at what demand contributing behaviors there are that we could stop at a young age to prevent our buyer population from continuing to grow.
Absolutely. And, if you could, back in like 2016 and I know it may have started a little bit before that, but where it is now and compared to all the programs and the things that you have to offer is a lot. Could you share with the audience where it originally started with, where Street Grace started and what you did?
Yes, so back in 2009, before I came on board, I trying to think of what type of school I would be in at that time, but we won't even go down that route. A
We're in
group of
elementary
churches.
school. I
Not
just
quite, not quite. A group of churches got together in the Atlanta area to deal with the rising instance of child sex trafficking in the Atlanta area, and went to then Mayor Shirley Franklin and asked how they could be of assistance. And so at the time, the city was really struggling with child sex trafficking and also failing sewer systems. So this group of faith partners chose child sex trafficking to lean into. And they got together, brought on Cheryl DeLuca Johnson, she's actually back on staff with us as a child advocate. So it's wonderful to welcome, kind of the original people back into the fold as well, now that we've become a more national organization. And back then it was a lot of advocacy, a lot of awareness, because you had to prove to people that this was an issue and you had to prove that it was happening in their area, anywhere with an affluent income or disposable income. So we are blessed to now be dealing with different issues than we were then, in that you don't really have to prove to people that this is happening. It's more so you have to dispel the myths and stereotypes that are spread around social media. And it's much more moved digital than on street corners or outside juvenile detention centers, things like that. So we keep adapting our programming. They're streamlined through 4 pillars: prevention, protection, policy, and pursuit. Through the prevention pillar, we have keeping kids safe in the digital age, arming parents with the knowledge they need to prevent this type of exploitation within their own family. We have Youth Leadership Academy, because we could give youth stats all day, but if we truly want them to walk away and remember and be changed after an interaction with us, then we have to help instill that leadership. So a confident child is a protected child, is the notion of Youth Leadership Academy. The protection pillar, we absorbed Georgia Cares programming back in 2020, which brought on a 24-hour hotline and delivering direct essential services to those currently and previously exploited. We've expanded that to cover the Tennessee area and include adults as well. The policy pillar, which we mentioned briefly, but drafting and assisting with and developing legislation that increases the consequences for the perpetrators of these crimes and aid survivors' ability to thrive after exploitation. This year, we're taking another big step on the legislative side where, sorry if you hear my toddler. We are hosting 4 roundtables in DC, 2 at the federal level and 2 at the state level for anti-trafficking legislation. So that is a huge move on our part, just becoming that national voice on human trafficking legislation, and it's been a true thing. And then we have pursuit, which is pursuit of the buyer, which is essential for the demand-centric organization, where we have our artificial intelligence platform that targets those seeking to exploit others online.
Absolutely. Now, is Atlanta still the #1 city for trafficking, or has that changed? Or
So Atlanta did get a very bad rep from that article because it was the top 10 cities in America for sex trafficking. But they did not include in that article that it was alphabetical. We hear a lot about sex trafficking here in the Atlanta area, but that is actually a good thing. That means that we aren't a city that is scared of it. That means that our law enforcement knows how to make arrests, knows how to spot what trafficking is actually looking like. If the city is kind of bragging on not having an issue with trafficking or not addressing it at all, they simply aren't trained to see what it's looking like today.
right. Exactly. Now, I think you may have answered this question because I was just when I threw that last question out there, but did you cover how trafficking and grooming changed in recent years?
Only briefly. We're not on the street corners anymore. It's pretty much all online. And I think as parents, we used to be able to lock the windows and doors at night and consider our kids safe, and that's no longer the case. And a lot of times, we are seeing sextortion cases lead to trafficking in which physical abuse never comes into play. And it can happen all over their mobile device from inside their bedroom. So it has grown increasingly difficult to combat, I would say. And traffickers are able to cast a much wider net than they used to be able to. Faythe, do you have
Absolutely.
anything to add there?
No,
So
you're right. Mm-mm.
go
I'm
ahead, Faith. I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, through kids can now find pornography in different apps like Pinterest. There's different anime things out there that kids are watching that are pornographic, which desensitizes them. When someone asks them for a nude photo, it reminds them of their special characters on the shows that they watch. Our culture has become increasingly sexual, hypersexual. And so now all you have to do is turn on the news and you get ads on your phone that, people don't have any clothes on hardly. And that's what kids see all the time. They see it on all the apps that they're on, the games that they play. And so, to Brooke's point, it's become increasingly harder because our culture and society as a whole is becoming more hypersexual and is accepting it. And so, when we teach children, or I teach children, you don't need to send nude photos and things like that. It's really difficult for them to comprehend, considering that the culture that they're growing up in actually glorifies it in a way.
Yeah, I mean, these ads. I mean, you can't get on your phone with these apps. We know that Big Brother's listening to us. Anything we talk, you mention something. Next thing you know, you're seeing an ad for it on your phone or whatever, and so it's just like being put right in their face, like you say. And I don't know what the answer is to that. It bothers me as an adult to see some of the stuff that comes across the phone.
Same.
Are there any kind of apps or anything that can help delete, get rid of those things, or anything that parents can do for their children's phone?
There's a Bark app that parents can use. It helps monitor their kids' phone in real time. The problem is that unless you take the mobile phone away, you're not going to get away from it. Because if you take the phone away, but you give them their tablet, they can still see the same thing. If you don't lock down YouTube, lock down Facebook, lock down all these social media apps and platforms that they can get on, and some of the gaming apps as well, if you're not taking it all away and just desensitizing them to how technology is changing, then there's really not much we can do until, and this is my personal thing here, but until enough of us stand up and say we're sick and tired of it, and we could do that collectively and all on one accord and in unity, we're still going to keep seeing this advance and grow in ways that we can't stop now that we have AI too.
Absolutely. I mean, whether you go out in a restaurant and you go out in a restaurant, or whether it's in people's homes today, the parents are on their phones. The kids are on their phones. They're not having real conversations with each other. How was their day or anything like that? And I have some friends that when they have dinner, their phones go on the counter in the kitchen and you're not allowed to bring them to the table. I mean, but sometimes parents are the worst example being on their phones all the time.
Yep.
So,
Agreed.
so what are the traffickers looking for?
You want me to grab that one, Brooke?
Go ahead.
I was taking the moment of silence as that. Everything. There's nothing that they don't look for. There's no gender specific, there's no race specific, there's no ethnicity specific, there's no hair color specific. Each trafficker will look for anybody with a vulnerability. And online, it's really, really easy because kids post their whole life online. So if someone's had an argument with their mom or dad, it's public and traffickers can find it. So really, while there's no socioeconomic background or anything like that that is immune to this issue, traffickers just want to know that the person has a vulnerability and they can meet that need. And usually that need is through some type of love, whether it's somebody just broke up with their boyfriend or their girlfriend, or their mom's mad at them for something. They come in with this, oh, well, I can take care of you and talk to me all about it. And they create a friendship slash like lover boy type relationship a lot of times. And it's a real easy end for traffickers with this generation.
And so most of the time, what we're talking about here today, and I'll let you guys explain this, is this is happening online with our children.
Yeah.
We have those things where you see these apps, next door apps, this or that, and I see this a lot too. We also, in the malls where these kids are walking in the malls and, they're meeting people or people are just following them, and things of this nature. I see that some of those posts in Nextdoor app. And so it's everywhere where they're at. They go to the mall. You don't know who's watching those kids, who's following those kids. Online, you don't know what they're doing. Another thing that some of my friends are parents and as even grandparents, don't let these kids take their phones to bed with them at night because they're going to stay on that phone all night long. And I just don't get how parents just let them do it. I don't know. Any suggestions?
Phones have become our babysitters.
Mm-hmm.
Tablets have become babysitters. TVs become babysitters. I know when I was being trafficked, it was more so it was more so the external. It was, setting up ads and things like that online, but it was nothing like it is now. And now that it's shifted more online, no, you don't know who they're talking to. And I think if parents can create some good boundaries with their kids and their phone use, their tablet use, their computer use, and just honestly have real hard conversations with them, like this is what trafficking looks like. We don't have stranger danger anymore because everybody's not a stranger now because of online. So
Right.
kids will just accept anyone that comes on their profile because they want to be influencers, like Instagram influencers and things like that. And so what they're being taught is it's okay to build your following and it doesn't matter who it is. It's okay to take risky pictures and it doesn't matter who sees them because you're building a following and you're becoming an influencer and that's attached to money. And if we could really have these conversations with families and parents and just kids in general, right? Like you don't have to go for the money and the fame in order to be liked and valued. And I think that's what's missing too is the kids in this generation, they don't know their worth and their value. They don't know their identity. And when they begin to learn that and see that their identity and worth is not in anything in this world, but it's foundationally in Jesus, then they can start shifting some of their mindset into not following after the crowds that they're at school with.
Well, and the other thing is that there's an age limit to be on these apps, is there not?
They're
Facebook,
supposed to be, but they
supposed
can,
to be. And
yeah.
but then again, let's go back to parents allowing their kids to set up these accounts and stuff like this, and not monitoring it. I mean, I've seen some. I mean, I don't have a TikTok account. I don't have a what do you call it? A Snapchat. I don't have I mean, I have a LinkedIn. I have a Facebook and an Instagram. Okay, so I just said that, and yeah, definitely go like my business page. I want you to celestegiordano.com.
Too funny, Celestia.
But the thing of it is that these parents, I mean, I look at some of the stuff and it's like, I know their parents don't know they're on this thing. I bet they don't even know that they have an account here. And my husband say, Celeste, it's not your place to say anything. I said, well, yes, it is my place to say something. I'm gonna, I love their parents. I love this child, and I know that their mother doesn't know that they have this account
Yeah.
right here, and I'm gonna tell them. So I may not be the favorite aunt sometimes, but
That's
anyway.
okay though.
A
That
lot of our trainings do not lead to the most popular adult or parent in the room, but we definitely advise on living room charging stations. We definitely advise on social media contracts if your kids are just getting on social media. Bark has a phone. They have an iWatch look-alike, and they look exactly like the real thing. So kids aren't feeling left out and things like that, but just have very limited functioning. Um, but like you mentioned, modeling those healthy behaviors. Your phone also goes in that living room charging station. So that's a very difficult practice to start, especially if these phones and tablets have already been introduced to your family. So we know that we're not asking an easy thing of people, but the stakes are simply too high. So when people are worried about their kid getting angry and people are worried about even setting those standards for themselves, we just ask that you look at the consequences that we're actually talking about, and it's an easy decision when you do.
Well, and I have some neighbors in my neighborhood, and we've lived there 33 years, but we have some new neighbors that moved in maybe 3 years ago. And so they have some children that are in middle school age, okay.
Mhm.
And some of the kids are in elementary school, but the middle school age, and the boys, they like to play some video games, and their parents are good Christians, but they have no, what is it, no internet Sunday or whatever it is. There nobody, even the parents, nobody's allowed to touch the phones, the games, or any of that on Sunday. And then
Mhm.
if they want screen time, they have to do chores to earn X amount of window blocks of screen time. And so I would
amazing.
call my neighbor, I'd say, and I learned this because I saw their boys outside pulling weeds and they had these bags. And I said, what are they doing? Oh, they're earning screen time. And then one day the boys were just running up and down the street, just back and forth. I said, Julie, did your boys join track or something? She said, no, they're outside, and, for every hour they're outside running and exercise, they're earning screen time to play their stuff. So they have to do something other than just sit there and get on the screen time, which I thought was pretty neat.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing, actually. I'm gonna have to
And I love
look
it, and I
into that.
respect it, and we need
Yeah.
more parents like that, modeling that. But it was just funny. It's like, why are your boys like keep constantly running up and down the street, or so yeah. For those listening, maybe we need to have your children earn the right to give them certain blocks of time, not unlimited time. I think that's the secret right there.
Yeah, because kids are on their phone 8 hours a day, which is a work day for their parents. And if they can be on their phone in class, they can be on their phone in break, they can be on their phone all night long, their brain is actually not getting a chance to decompress from their day, much less the things that they're watching. And so they're growing up with this 30-second fix for everything and not understanding that relationships take time and you have to have face-to-face communication and you can't just have all your relationships online. So I think that's another good point too.
And I think we sort of answered this question of what is the best way to prevent exploitation. Is there anything else, Brooke or Faith, that you want to add?
I think I just want to add like education. Understand what it is that you're teaching your kids, make sure it's age appropriate, and have the hard conversations. Because for me as a survivor, those conversations weren't had. So I didn't know what to look for. I just had the white van. Don't get in the white van. Don't talk to the guy in the white van. So I didn't know that the people closest to me were actually going to end up being my perpetrators. And so when we talk about stranger danger now with kids, it's and parents too. It's, teach your kids that if an uncle or an aunt says something that's inappropriate, it's okay to come tell mom and dad. Or if a cousin or something like that tries to touch you inappropriately, it's okay to come tell mom and dad. Because also what happens, especially in the familial aspect of it, is it's mom and dad's going to be mad at you if you say anything. They're not going to love you anymore if you say anything. And that's not the truth, but that's the messaging that kids get. And if parents can beat that and head it off at the pass, then they'll actually be able to create a deeper, intimate relationship with their kids. So when someone does say that to them or does try to do that to them, they can come to mom and dad and feel safe and comfortable.
Well, and another thing, Faythe, and I'd love for your perspective as well as Brooks, is we live in an era now where, I grew up where I had both mom and dad that raised me, and so there are a lot of people today that these kids are growing up with just one parent, with just a mom or just a dad, or maybe they have a single parent, but they have a boyfriend or a girlfriend that's living in the house. So, as you said, Faythe, the culture and the morals and values are a little bit different. And if you're a single parent raising your child, if you're a father raising a daughter, you need to make sure that you inspect what you expect with your child in the social media and have an open communication that they can come and talk to you. And if there is a distance, that needs to be a red flag, because if they're not, having conversations with you, not wanting to spend time with you, who are they spending their time with? And you don't want them to get around the wrong person or an older boy or something like that that is going to emulate, like you said, that they love and care for you, and you're not getting that, at home in a way that's it should be from a parent to a child.
I don't disagree with that. I think it's very hard to be a single parent. I know for me, for a little while, I was a single mom. And so it is very difficult, especially if you're a mom raising a boy or a dad raising a girl, because there's just a difference in gender. And so I think the one thing that's really important to highlight is that relationship aspect, is that open, honest, trustworthy interaction between you and your child, especially as a single parent, and if at all working with the other parent to say, hey, I'm going to sit down and talk to the kids about this. Can we do it together? Can we agree to sit down and talk to them together? So they don't feel a separation between their parents, even more so than they already do, but they see them coming together on one accord to talk about hard topics, but to also be those safe people for them. Kids need safe adults. And if they don't have that at home, then they're going to find it somewhere else.
Well, and another thing that I've seen over the years, Faythe and Brooke, is I would hear a parent say, "Well, my child is a straight A student." Well, that doesn't mean that they're not going to get in trouble or they're
Right.
not going to go down the wrong path. Is that right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was a straight A student for a little while. I don't know about Brooke, but I was. And like and
Yeah.
until my later high school years, let me put it that way. But yeah, I mean, again, it can happen anywhere. I don't think there's a map, and I think it's Polaris has it. Brooke, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure it's Polaris that shows all the counties in the state that there's trafficking. And in Georgia, there's not many that it doesn't exist. And so
Right.
that's from Alpharetta to down south in Savannah to all the way up north in Gainesville and middle Georgia. I mean, it just happens everywhere. It happens on college campuses, it happens in high schools and elementary schools and middle schools. And that's why it's important to have those conversations, because it doesn't matter what grades your kids make. That's not immune from being trafficked.
Absolutely. I was just making a conversation here for our audience and listeners that sometimes I hear a parent say, and I think it's great that a child is a straight A student and doing really well, but that doesn't mean that they're invisible and that they may not, be going down the wrong path or on social media or whatever it is with their phone, having, meeting people that they shouldn't be meeting. Just because they're straight A doesn't mean they're immune from it,
Right.
you know, on that. So let's talk about how is Street Grace working to change the human trafficking policy landscape in Georgia?
Uh, Advocacy Day is one of the main things, legislative priorities, and that includes, like Brooke touched on this earlier, like harsher buyer penalties. In Georgia, we need to see buying being a felony on the first offense for anyone over the age of 18, because under minors, it's automatically that, but we really need to see that shift in our state. Um, Also, any way to help survivors have a better life. So if that means, like you touched on earlier in my bio, removing the charges associated with criminal acts while being trafficked so that they can they can get apartments, they can get any type of housing or jobs and things like that. I've known several survivors who did not get jobs just merely based on their exploitation background, and one recently who had to have a board decide that it was okay for her to move forward in a position because she had prostitution in her background from being trafficked. And so it's changing some of those ways that because after you come out, you know, McDonald's doesn't always pay the bills. And
Right.
so it's how do they get what they need from a legislative standpoint that says, hey, we want you to have a better life in our state. We don't want you to continue to be victimized. But a lot of people go back because there's no buffer in between. And so really legislatively just making sure that we take care of survivors, that we put them first and foremost, just like we do domestic violence survivors as well.
Absolutely. And that bill got passed, right, a few
It
years ago?
did.
Yeah.
It's been edited a few times, but it did. And
I,
also, having this age verification in our state to where you touched on this earlier, as kids can just go online and create whatever account they want, is because right now they can put in a fake birthday. They can put in a fake name. So they can create 15 accounts if they want on social media. But
and
having
they
something yeah, and having age verification in place, meaning you have to upload a photo ID of who you are and
mhm.
have to have all the pertinent information. So short of a child going and stealing their parents' driver's license out of their wallet for a few minutes to take a photo, they're going to have something that proves that they're over a certain age. And it would be great if we could get it 16, 17 or older, because it keeps them from seeing harmful content all the time.
No, absolutely. I totally agree with you on that. I mean, we have to have all these IDs and this or that. Why not with the kids and being able to for the social media and things of this nature? Um, it's just a hot topic with me, the social media. Uh, but anyways, we won't go down that path. Um, so let me ask you, what legislation has Street Grace helped with in the past that has helped human trafficking survivors? I think we just talked about one.
We did. Yeah. Um, Brooke,
Well, I
I'm
mean,
just
the
completely
increasing the
blank.
penalties also affects survivors, because when you're looking at legislation that affects trafficking and affects, all sexually deviant behaviors, you have to think of it from the sex education standpoint, and for people that argue for legalization and things like that, how are you to go into a room of 13-year-old boys and tell them that something's wrong if it is legal? Right. So if we look at, we always say to look at things through the eyes of our youth, right? But that doesn't necessarily translate to legislation sometimes. And that leads to youth going to pornography as their sex education, which, there are so many stats on the effects of pornography, but specifically on the content of pornography. And at one point, it was 82% contained violence or derogatory terms used towards women. And that is what our boys and girls are using to educate themselves on what they think would be a healthy sexual relationship.
So do they have any programs in school that that you're advocating for these issues in school? Do they go into the schools at all and about the dangers of social media or exploitation or anything like that?
Um, I, I I can't speak to they. I can speak to Street Grace. They, we have the Youth Leadership Academy, and that's a wonderful tool because it does get into topics such as sextortion and social media and your online reputation and your online footprint, things of that nature, while under the guise of the larger mission to instill leadership in the next generation. Because we can spend all day talking about the ramifications of social media and the negative effects, but it has made this next generation take action so quickly, and it has made this next generation's empathy level will just continue to grow because they are connected with children across the world. And so, as with so many things, that even with people, we often say, you know, what you love about a person is what you hate about a person. And so, with social media, we have to look at it and look at the positive that it's bringing and really pour into that with our youth so that they feel like they have a foundation to stand on to have that confidence to take a stand against this type of exploitation in their schools as well, because we're seeing a lot of peer-to-peer exploitation. You hear it most in revenge porn cases and things like that. But unless we're giving them the tools to stand up against very normalized behaviors, like Faythe said, we're not asking an easy thing of them. So we have to start with the leadership aspect. So that YLA is available both in person and online now. We're actually in the final stages of beta testing the online version. So if anybody has a group of youth that would like to navigate it, we'd love to have them join and navigate these modules based off of mental health, because that's something that we haven't gotten into tonight, is that sextortion cases specifically with our young men is directly linked to the mental health crisis that we're seeing in teens today. So it's impossible to deal with one and not the other, just like when dealing with pornography and sex trafficking. So.
Absolutely. Faythe, any comments you want to make on that?
No, I think Brooke hit it pretty well.
Okay.
We've been talking, well, I'll just say this, we've been talking a lot about how pornography plays into this as well. And what I think people don't realize, that I would just want to end on this, is that any app that where you could find pictures, any app where you can find character animations and things like that, you'll most likely stumble into pornography. And so, like I said, you know, at the very beginning, like Pinterest has pornography on it, depending on where you look and depending on what you're looking up. And so if we can stop hypersexualizing our kids and just teach them what healthy sexuality is and how to talk appropriately about their own bodies as well, and not use nicknames for body parts and things like that when they're younger, and give them the appropriate names for them, then when they see things like this, they'll begin to start thinking, oh, this is not okay. This is what my mom talked to me about. This is not right. I need to tell somebody.
So I'm maybe a little naive on this, Faythe, but you say on Pinterest. So I mean, that is it ads or is it, I don't understand how you
Anime cartoons that kids look up. They look up their favorite characters and try to get images of them off Pinterest. And there was a young girl at one point who stumbled into pornography by looking up anime. The characters were drawn in such a way that it was highly sexual and highly inappropriate, but it was accidental for her to stumble upon it because she was looking up different anime characters, her favorite characters from a show she watched, and that's how she found it. And so it's in these apps and things that we deem safe, but really it's just hiding. The more you look at something, the more you can find it. It's
can
hiding
find
in
it?
plain sight.
Okay, that's interesting, very interesting. So how can we get involved in advocating for new legislation in our state?
Definitely sign up to get our newsletters, because any involvement opportunity and any opportunity that we have to write committee members or your representatives, we will be sharing it out that way, and follow us on social media. And increasingly, as we get into other states, just sharing that material to those that you know across the US, because so many people have a heart for advocacy and so many people want to help fight against this, but it's just they need tangible steps. So sharing what you learn with others, and even if you don't know anybody in Arizona, we were just doing a legislative post about Arizona. Is sharing it on your Facebook, getting people to comment the names of the people that live in Arizona. Just take that moment to say, okay, what can I do to take action now when you learn something new?
Absolutely. And Brooke, if you would you share with our audience and listeners any links? I know we have it in the chat, but verbally, in case somebody's listening to it through audio,
Mhm.
how can people, what is your website, or how can they reach out to you, whether they want you to come speak to their church group or their group, or they want to take a class or something? How can they do that?
Um, Well, our website's very simple. It is streetgrace.org. Most of our social media handles are at streetgrace. And I think Faythe is dropping some in the chat now, so thank you very much. So feel free. We have a newsletter sign up on our site. We also put our emails in the chat. They are just our first names at streetgrace.org. So Brooke at streetgrace.org and Faythe at streetgrace.org. And we both field requests for speaking events here in the Georgia area and nationally. So feel free to reach out for any questions. We'll be happy to get back to you.
Absolutely. And what is the one policy initiative that you would like to see our state adopt?
I know Faythe already mentioned it, but felony on first offense for sure.
Yeah. So that buyers, so if a buyer purchases anyone over the age of 18, right now it's a misdemeanor in our state. It's not a felony. And so we've been trying for a couple of years to get it passed. So that would be the one thing, because the thing is no buyer wants to go home and tell their wife or their family that they just got a sex offense for purchasing someone. They don't want to lose their job. They don't want to go through all of that. But right now there's so much anonymity behind being able to purchase 10, 12 people in a week and know that you're only going to get a slap on the wrist and a misdemeanor with maybe 8 days in jail.
And what do you think is the drawback? What not the drawback, or what is the why we can't get that passed?
I don't have an answer for that. I have a lot of personal opinions that
I do too. I was just
keep
curious.
to myself, but here's the thing that I think most people don't think about when it comes to trafficking. And I do talk about this as a survivor, is that the buyers that used to purchase me came from all types of backgrounds, whether it was legislative backgrounds, whether it was judges, attorneys, doctors, businessmen, business owners, whether it was blue collar workers, construction workers. There was the whole gamut, all races, all they need is expendable income and a sexual addiction, really, because most buyers have a sexual addiction. And so until we start removing the mask of who they are, we're not going to see anything happen, which is what TI does. It takes the mask off and it removes the anonymity online.
Right.
But we need harsher penalties and punishments so that when they hear about this, because it's not that they don't follow anti-trafficking organizations or anything like that, a lot of them do. I've even run into some of my former buyers at events that I've attended or spoke at. And so it's not that they're not in these spaces. So they know that right now they still can just get a slap on the wrist. If we change that, then they're going to start thinking twice about, do I really want a felony that's going to affect me for the rest of my life because I can't get it off my record?
Well, and absolutely. And we have, you think about this, whether it's a married couple or it's a girlfriend, boyfriend living together, they're on, if they're going away and getting on their phones or their computers late at night or early in the morning and stuff like that, hopefully you want to make sure that, that they're doing good work or they're doing their work. But if they're, you just gotta monitor that stuff. I mean, you just, you never think it would be your spouse or your girlfriend or your boyfriend, whatever it is. You just would never think that, because I don't know if it's how it is right now, but it used to be the north end of Atlanta, Johns Creek area and all that was really a very high area for sex trafficking, was it not?
I think it still is. I don't think any county in Georgia has really changed the landscape as far as the amount of trafficking that's happening in it. I think what it is now there's more awareness about it. Whereas back then, you wouldn't think to find it in those areas because people didn't talk about it. But now there's so much conversation around trafficking, and there's still more to be had, but I think it's just coming more and more to light.
Absolutely. Now, do you guys have a gala coming up in the spring or anything? Or in the fall? It's in October, maybe? Do you have a gala, Brooke?
Early November.
Early
Yeah.
November.
Yes, I don't have a set date for you, but I believe it's going to be the first week of November. And then we'll also have a 5K in September.
And
So
so,
I'll get that information to
okay.
you.
And Faythe, do we have any classes starting, or like do you have like I know I took a couple of classes there in Norcross. Are there any classes for our audience or listeners that they can go get educated at?
We don't have any right now, but you can always go on our YouTube page. and see our past trainings and everything. And that would be really where I would start. But we don't have any scheduled at the moment.
We have one that's about to be up in partnership with Georgia Festival of Trees. So we joined with them about 2 years ago. So we'll be hosting a training at Norcross Library, a panel, and then a Keeping Kids Safe webinar with them as well in the next few months. And then we will also be joining Truckers Against Trafficking for an online webinar in May. So just got that confirmed today. So a lot of things in the works that will get to you.
And you'll have that up on your website and things of that nature,
Yeah,
correct?
on that events page. Also coming up is my Freedom Day, which will be March 11th at Atlanta International Schools. So we'll be there. CNN will be there covering. And so feel free to come out and join us to celebrate my Freedom Day.
Absolutely. And I know we didn't bring one thing up here, and we have just a few minutes. We still have Gracie. Do we still have the Gracie?
Yes, yes. Transaction Intercept,
Yes.
which got my lovely little light here. That is our AI investigatory platform that we developed to aid law enforcement and remove the time-consuming, costly, and very cumbersome process of human trafficking operations through the bot developed with BBDO years ago. We discovered that nobody was struggling for funding more than nonprofits, more than our law enforcement partners. And the process to get $200 approved is the same process to get $12,000 approved. So just a lot of red tape that they go up against when dealing with this on the front line. So a gap that Street Grace was able to serve was developing this online platform for law enforcement to log in and view the conversations had with potential buyers online and either take over that conversation and make an arrest or send out a deterrence message that lets them know the ramifications of their actions. And everything is stored in a permanent file with that buyer. This was developed in partnership with Microsoft's Hack for Good program. So volunteer software engineers have gotten involved and lended their expertise to the cause. So we're thrilled to be undergoing a national rollout of this software. So if you have any contacts in the law enforcement field, feel free to get them connected with us. It is free for law enforcement, and we're onboarding new partners every week.
Very good. Well, I appreciate that. Well, Faythe and Brooke, we've come to the end of the hour here, and I just can't thank you enough for your time here today, but most importantly, for your servant hearts and what you do in the community to educate and inform our people against advocacy for the human trafficking. So thank you so much for that. And I just want to say that Street Grace is very near and dear to women and community impact. I know Penny Rogers with WCEG Talk Radio. It's near and dear to their hearts. And we look forward to helping and supporting you and hopefully being able to attend the gala this year that you're going to be having. And we just, anything that we can do for our audience and listeners, these are great opportunities and two amazing women to bring them into your organization, whether it's like a Kiwanis or a Rotary Club or any of these things, and have them come speak to your organization because they have a wealth of knowledge that can help us in outside of Atlanta into the other counties and into the cities and things of that nature. So thank you for everything you do. I think you guys just recently spoke at Kiwanis. Did you speak, Brooke, at Kiwanis recently with up
That
there?
may have been Bob. I know I was at Rotary recently,
Okay,
but not Kiwanis here in Georgia. Yeah.
Yeah,
yes.
I spoke at Kiwanis last year.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
It was Faythe. There you go. I thought I
Yeah.
thought Joan had gotten you there. So we appreciate that. Again, streetgrace.org. Or excuse me, if you want to email them, info@streetgrace.org, and it's www.streetgrace.org. And so Brooke and Faythe, thank you so much for your time today. Wish you a wonderful and blessed week. And Penny Rogers and our WCEG Talk Radio family, thank you for this opportunity and this platform that we can get this message out to the community. Our hearts love your hearts. Women in Community Impacts is very grateful for you. Thank you.
Grateful for
Thank
you as
you.
well.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you so
us.
much for having us.